welcome to Games from Folktales, a podcast that mixes historical research and tabletop role-playing settings. I'm your host, Timothy Ferguson. This is not your episode for the week. I need to test some new equipment, and so I'm going to ramble about Ars Magica while I do it, and hopefully get an episode. You'll get a fuller episode at the usual time. So, a ramble about the magical realm. The core text for Sanctuary of Ice was The Pale Mountains by Carlo Felix Wolff, and I recently saw on LibriVox that someone had recorded a chapter, which I've presented here as a podcast episode. So it's in the public domain. I could record it myself. I could give Ars Magica annotations for it. And I've been thinking about why I haven't started working on a 25th anniversary edition as an update for Sanctuary of Ice. I've decided it's because the magic realm doesn't seem to work, and I don't want to be the one to fix it. Now, I know that sounds a bit like Carl Sagan saying that to bake an apple pie from scratch you have to start by constructing the universe, but hear me out here. There are two Domus Magnae in Greater Alps, the Cave of Twisting Shadows and Valnastium. They're meant to hold up the two ends of the Order's view of how secret magic is. One of them is full of mystery cultists, and the other are full of secularists, for want of a better term. Our current magic realm has never really worked for me as a place to tell stories in. The magic creature construction rules are wonderfully intricate, and they're world-building, and I've never really wanted to use them, so I tend to use the fairy rules and then just put a magic score on top. A magic night score, that is. Now, I'm not saying that this is the fault of any of the authors, or that it is even really a fault. Realms of Power Fairies is crunchier than I like as well, and I wrote the crunchy bits that I'm complaining about. This isn't a matter of whether the book is empirically good or bad, it's a matter of personal taste. I personally am at the fluffy end of role-playing games design. I'm not talking about any of these books in a universal sense. House Yarburton believes many things, but let's look at the least mystical approach to magic. One view is that humans have been given dominion over the earth by God, and they are permitted to create things from the earth, within the earth, as a subordinate creation. Magic is a literal gift, a charism, to go biblical, given to some humans to do this. The human sense of beauty is, to use Creaman terminology for a moment, the method of determining aptness. That is, you know whether magic is being used properly by seeing whether the outcome is beautiful or not. This idea does slightly post-date the setting. I believe it's counter-reformational, but it makes the Yarburton the opposite of the Creaman. Where magic comes from is simple, and how magical actions can be judged is innate to all people, and Yarburton's philosophy is why Buenos Aires eventually called magic an art, not a science. The magic realm to a Yarburton is where the forms are. These are the underlying structures that humans drape matter over. You might want to go there because there are things that you've not seen in the real world, or which can't be rendered in matter. It's where dreams are said to come from, for example. There's a place for a realm in the Yarburton cosmology in the sense that God has an attic that he keeps the forms in. This is perhaps not as interesting to a Yarburton as, say, going to a city in a neighbouring country, where you will also see things that you've never seen before or thought about, and it's probably cheaper and easier. House Creaman. I shouldn't think about House Creaman late at night. Here's what I've been thinking recently. When I got to House Creaman, it was a mess. I have taken a lot of grief from Ars Magica fans about what I did to House Creaman, and I don't regret a thing. It was a pastiche of Zen Buddhism. It used the white wolf idea that mental illness is a fun thing for you ables to tourist in. Our previous book had tied it to Empedocles, which I don't object to at all. They also like to stab their preemie for reasons which aren't entirely clear, and there was an awful lot of human sacrifice in the early Ars Magica books, much of it unnecessary. Their Domus Magus is named after Socrates' allegory of the cave. There are all these bits, and they don't fit together. I don't criticise, by the way, using allegories as if they were statements of actual solid fact. Half the podcast episodes here are me deliberately taking something that's meant as a metaphor and turning it into a game character. My desire was to glue all of this together without throwing too much of it away, and the single philosophy I could use that did that was Heleno-Buddhism. It let me hold as many of the pieces together as I could. Kriyaman is pretty clearly a Pure Land Bodhisattva. To explain what I'm talking about there, a Bodhisattva is a teacher who could become a Buddha and pass permanently from the cycle of suffering and rebirth, but has chosen not to as an act of compassion towards those who are still trapped in the world. A Pure Land Bodhisattva is a teacher of this type, a Bodhisattva, who has created a spiritual land where people, usually the dead, can go to avoid rejoining the cycle of suffering through reincarnation. Additionally, the Pure Land might be the perfect place to continue your spiritual studies. I'd note that in some Pure Lands, you find people who are deeply morally compromised because the Bodhisattva has set the boundaries around their land to allow those people in, so that you don't need to be a saint to get in the first place. Similarly, in some of these lands, there are several categories of potential emanated lands. There are things you can do there that draw you away from enlightenment. And those are there either as a teaching tool or so that people who have that error within them can express the error and extirpate it. So this explains why sometimes in Final Twilight you find people who aren't saints, essentially. To House Kriyaman, magic is complicated. It's very complicated. It's so complicated you can't discuss it in normal Latin. You discuss it in a specialist jargon, which is called enigmatic wisdom, and even then there are some things you can't discuss. There are intuitive leaps that a student can be guided toward, but not carried through. This is expressed through Zen, or actually Chan in this case, riddles, basically to a magus dancing at the far edge of Kriyaman's obscurantism. There is arguably no magic realm, or the magic realm is so poorly defined that it's pointless to discuss. Certainly Twilight exists, but are we sure that any of the stuff around Twilight is truly separate? That is the magic realm, as discussed by other members of the Order of Hermes, just bits of Twilight that they've not really understood? Are Deep Twilight and Final Twilight real things, or are they just perceptions? Let me try and argue metaphorically. Imagine you're a sailor. The Mediterranean Sea is relatively easy to sail on, and in 1220 at least, the Atlantic Ocean is notoriously not so. The point is, though, that they aren't actually separate bodies of water. They're two parts of a whole that is divided by a human perception that says that there is a border at the Pillars of Hercules and that there are two different things, one on either side. Similarly, the realm of magic might just be the Pure Land, and the people describing Far Twilight, Final Twilight, might just be poor sailors looking out through a human border like the Pillars of Hercules. I can push this further because the obvious answer to my question, what if there is no realm of magic, is another question, which is, what was there fueling magic when Kriyaman, a being in time, created his Pure Land? And the argument would be that magic isn't actually a thing, and therefore it doesn't have a realm, and it didn't have a realm before Kriyaman created something that looks like a realm. Let us string very difficult metaphors to this. Centrifugal force. It's not a real force. It's an apparent force. You've experienced it, of course, if you've ever been on a roundabout or any sort of fairground ride that spins, or you've been in a car that's taken a sudden corner while you weren't expecting it. You have felt centrifugal force. The thing is, it's not real. It's an apparent force which is caused by your inertia and the changing frame of reference around you, which you don't notice. It's an illusion. It's an illusion that has effects, but it's not a real force. So the reason I'm mentioning this is because you use gravity every day, and in special relativity, gravity isn't a real force. You can feel me building the ladder toward magic not being a real force. I can't explain this very well, but let's try. You fall off a roof. As you're falling off a roof, are you falling toward the ground, or is the ground rising up toward you? Now, in Newtonian physics, you are falling toward the ground. The sensation that the ground is rising up to meet you is an illusion in Newtonian physics. The proofs of this are that the ground is bigger than you and bigger things have more gravity, and that an observer looking at you and the ground would see you falling toward the ground rather than the ground rising up to meet you. These are fine, provided everyone stays in the same referential frame. Let's get rid of the easy one first, the observer. It's all very well to say that the person watching you fall off a roof can tell that you're falling toward the ground and not the ground coming up toward you. But what if 5 of you were falling off the roof towards that person? You could well turn to one of the other 5 and say, why is that person rising up towards us? Consensus is convenient, but it's not decisive because all you're doing is comparing the frames of reference of the 2 witnesses. You're not talking about an underlying truth. This is one of those intuitive leaps that Kreeman likes so much. Gravity is something you use every day. Gravity is not real. It's an apparent force. The more difficult one is bigger objects have more gravity, therefore smaller objects move towards them. In special relativity, that observed effect is not caused by gravity. It's caused by mass. Mass causes space-time to curve. The more mass, the more curve, and objects that are appearing to be dragged down by gravity are actually travelling in a straight line through curved space-time. You, on Earth, are in a non-inertial frame of reference, which is to say you're moving much in the same way that the roundabout is moving in the centrifugal example. If you're ever in an inertial frame of reference, like space, the apparent force, gravity, disappears. I'm mentioning this because my suggestion is that in the same way that centrifugal force is an apparent force, which I hope I've convinced you of, and that gravity is an apparent force, which I know I won't have convinced you of, but I suggest you look up on YouTube, it's possible that a member of House Kreeman might say the thing that was there before the Pure Land was magic, and magic isn't real. Magic is an apparent force. House Kreeman says that there are tides of Vim washing over the world, and that they are caused by the universe's decay into complete chaos. This is also why Creo needs Viz and Perdo doesn't. It's because time has a direction. Now what this means is that when you're sitting outside of this cycle in the Pure Land, you may be looking back into the world, and maybe like someone outside the roundabout going, there is no centrifugal force. You may be looking at the world and going, magic isn't a force. In the same way that you drop a ball and it flies towards the ground, it's not being sucked down by the ground, it's falling in a straight path through curved space-time. So similarly, when you cast a spell, you aren't controlling magic in the same way that you aren't controlling gravity with the ball. You're just letting a thing, which in mystery cults is called a daemon, unhelpfully, do what it does as immediately as it can through the Vim aura. Looking from outside, magic mightn't be a thing. The realm of magic, such as it is, may just be an emanation from Kreeman's spirit. So the answer to what was there before Creerman was that there was nothing there, and speaking on a higher order of things, there still is nothing there. There is no magic. There's just Creerman, who's letting you sit outside the magic for a while. Now, I'm not suggesting that either of these are true. What I'm saying is that when I want to expand on what Primus Andrew and Prima Mascaria are doing, I need to find a way to link really extreme ideas like these back into the Magic Realm book. And I haven't found a lot of good points to hook these sort of extreme philosophies on what magic could be and could mean back in. And I find that paralyzing as an author because I'm not good at mechanics compared to the other authors. And so this is why it feels like when I'm trying to get my thoughts together on a 5th edition version of Sanctuary of Ice, I feel like what I'd need to do first is to rework the Magic Realm. And that's my ramble. You will get a proper episode later in the week. Thank you. Your saga, well, in this case, your saga most certainly will vary.